This is going to be a big battle. The team has been named, and there was an expectation in the build-up to the naming of the team that there wouldn't be that many changes made, but significant raft of changes really from an Irish perspective. Alan, what do you make of the changes that have been made?
A little bit surprised, I think, that they haven't gone with an out-and-out 7. Joe Schmidt in the press conference a couple of hours ago was talking about getting Jack Conan in there. He's fresh, hungry for work. He's a very good player, in fairness, very, very skillful, brings a real dynamic presence, and to put Peter O'Mahony and CJ Stander either side kind of keeps a lot of experience, a lot of grit, if you like, there. O'Mahony was outstanding last week, the 3 turnovers. He's not an out-and-out 7, he has played there before, but he has to, can he deliver again next week, this weekend at the breakdown, because, and I said this to you last week, Ger, and I'm saying it a lot, it's not just your 6 and 7 who follow Pocock and Hooper, it's everybody throughout the team, your wingers, your outside centres. If they're clearing out a ruck, they have to be conscious of the fact that, I think it was up on 30 times again last week, that Pocock and Hooper had hands in and were hovering around rucks where potentially they sensed an opportunity. So they're incredibly good at that. And they tried to disrupt Ireland, but Ireland were so good last week. So I think he's picked a team, and when you look at the team, it's a lot of experience, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of characters, leadership. Cutting edge is probably the question mark. Gary Ringrose being out of the side is, usually disappointing. I think you're back to the partnership that didn't function that well in Brisbane. 2 brilliant players, Bundy Aki, Robbie Henshaw. And I think Robbie Henshaw, look, I love him as a player. I think he's just so abrasive, full of energy, power. He's all action. I think he got the timing wrong with 1 or 2 calls defensively in Brisbane. So will the Aussies try and exploit that again? Absolutely. So he's a big job at 13, not just defensively, but to try and exploit the opportunities, because I thought Ringrose was really good. They're different players. So the spine of the team is very, very strong there. I think Jack McGrath coming in for Keane Healy, there's no major change there. Sean Cronin, maybe it can be put to bed now that Joe doesn't like Sean Cronin. And he'll have a real chip in his shoulder. I met him here in the hotel earlier, and he's just delighted. He was brimming, big smile across the face, and I hope he goes well. I think he's a great player if he can bring some of that Leinster form. So maybe the back row, with that no out-and-out 7, Sean Cronin and Keith and the 13 situation are probably the areas that kind of jump out.
It's some environment for Ross Byrne to potentially make his first cap, because obviously there's no Joey Carberry on the bench if Sexton goes down, or as we've been seeing, if Sexton gets hooked after 70 minutes, if he's feeling tired or anything like that. Ross Byrne goes into a deciding test in Sydney. That is some environment to go in, isn't it, Quinny?
Yeah, some pressure cooker on. Somebody said to me today, what if Sexton goes down after 5 minutes? Well, we know a lot about Ross Byrne then if he has to come on. I think he will have benefited hugely from being involved with the squad in the Six Nations, training with the team, being on tour, seeing how the likes of Sexton operates, the likes of Murray, the preparation, the ability to sit. And he's had a brilliant year. He's played a lot of 10, so maybe there's no concern at all. I think obviously he's uncapped, and he's the only player. He's the last player in the squad who's is going to have an involvement. So it's brilliant that Joe's getting him involved, but certainly a pressurised environment that he's going into.
Yeah, no sign of Joey Carberry being injured, so this is obviously just to give him game time.
Yeah, and I think, look, he's true to his word. Joe said before this tour that he's going to try and get everyone playing, everyone some sort of involvement. And look, even if he only gets 5-10 minutes at the end, he'll feel involved if he gets on, gets his cap. I watched him the last couple of weeks, and he's tugged out and trained, and he's run out onto the field with him. This time he's going to be on the bench, and he's involved in the matchday squad, so that's good for him. And like I said, he's been superb this year for Leinster when he's played. He's played up on 20 games at fly half, so it's not as if he's not familiar with it. Being in the squad, he'll have learned a lot, but it is different. The pace of the game, the pace last week, particularly towards the end of the game when Ty Byrne came on, when it's tough. it's tough because so that sometimes can be a bit of a shock. But look, his playing ability and his physical presence, the physical side of the game, he won't shy away from it.
What's Andrew Conway's situation? Because he was managed a bit through training this week. Was he injured as well? Like, do we know, is there a sense in Stockdale coming back in that that's his first choice, or did Conway do enough, or what's the story there, do you think?
I sense he was always possibly going to go back to Stockdale. Look, if Andrew Conway played really well, he likes Andrew Conway, Joe Schmidt. I like him. I think he's a great player. So unfortunate to get the injury again. It's bruising on the hip from the tackle when he scored a try. He didn't recover significant enough to train on Tuesday, and Joe spoke about that in the press conference, that Ian Henderson, Gary Ringrose, Andrew Conway, Dan Levy were all unavailable because of injury. At a push, maybe they could have trained later in the week, some of them, but not significantly enough to. And you know, when you're only training 2 days, Jared, they're only training Tuesday, Thursday, likely it'll run out tomorrow. But the 2 days are the big days. Tuesday, that's where you get your shape. That's when you get a lot of heavy work done. Thursday is a bit of fine tuning from. So guys not being in the side would disrupt. So he's based it on those decisions, not being able to train. But Conway's unlucky, no doubt. But if you get that kind of bruising in your hip or that dead leg scenario, it's hard to shake it off. And unfortunately for him, he hasn't been able to.
The element of the amount of changes that we've seen between each game is interesting, Quinlan, especially in the context of the World Cup. Do you think that Joe is kind of looking at things and thinking to himself, right, there's going to be a quick turnover between a lot of the games in the World Cup? Granted, we start with our two toughest games in next year's edition rather than the way it was in 2015. But at the same time, you look at it and you look at the quick turnover of bodies that happened in 2015, and that could happen again. And is he thinking about that when it comes to these three tests? Is he thinking about the turnover in bodies, or is it mostly just to get people to run out on this tour?
I think it's the turnover of bodies zone. It's trying to, give experiences to guys out on the field at international level. It is a step up from provincial. The pace, the accuracy, the quality you're playing against, the time on ball. It's very hard to manage that and get everybody an equal kind of shot at it. But like some guys like Ross Bourne, look, he wasn't involved in the first two tests, but he would have ran with the team, ran against them. He would have been probably running Australian plays against Ireland. So even the training pitch stuff is money in the bank. And this tour, and like I said, Joe wants to try and develop that strength. You know, if Johnny Sexton was out injured and Carberry was the starting 10, well, Ross Byrne could easily kind of, he jumps up the pecking order. He could be number 2, and you never know. So getting guys game time, I think there's a fair bit of depth in the front row, a lot of back row options. The second row now, this year with the emergence of James Ryan, has given more strength there. Ultan Delan will have a say trying to get back into the mix for the World Cup. And a lot of outside back options as well. So you want probably 30 guys who are equal, very little between them. Historically, I was at 3 of them, and you have the kind of starters, then you have the bench, and then you have the rest, if you like, who maybe not perceived starters. So he'd love to go, and it'd be an ideal situation for Joe Schmidt to go to the World Cup and have 25, 28 potential starters and to be able to rotate and mix. And invariably, you have a tough game, maybe a weaker game, tough game, weaker game, that type of scenario. So you kind of have to have two teams in your head. It'd be brilliant if you could mix and match. And look, there's a lot of guys, particularly in the forward, that there's not a lot of between guys, and we've seen with changes that there's not a huge amount in difference. So it's all about depth. And he wants to go to the World Cup next year. I know there's a lot of rugby to be played since with November internationals, Six Nations, but this team has achieved so much. Winning in South Africa for the first time, championships in 14, 15, Grand Slam, beating Australia for the first time in 39 years. I said that, but the one that keeps sticking out is Joe Schmidt wants a semi-final at least.
Yeah.
World Cup.
You say there's a lot of rugby to be played, but there's actually 9 competitive internationals, after this one, before our first game in the World Cup, and that's it.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's loads of big, high-profile club games where the players can get played. But, from his perspective, not a whole room for experimentation over the course of those 9 games. And, like very few players have made the team who would be first choice who have less than 10 caps. So you can't really expect a whole heap of change between now and then. Maybe 1 or 2 players might be able to force their way in. Maybe Tadhg Beirne becomes a starter, who knows? But like, we're not a million miles away here from looking at what the lineup is going to be like, what the patterns of play are going to be, and maybe that's the point, that you can make 5 changes now, which is what the 5 changes were forced on him in that France game, from the France game to the Argentina game in the World Cup, and the systems will hold up against Australia and they'll still be able to win.
Yeah, and that's an ideal scenario, but every team has to cope with. New Zealand coped in 2011 when Dan Carter got injured, and they had a mad Aaron Cruden got injured, and they had to scramble for I can't think of his name again. What's his name, Ger? The All Blacks come in and started.
The guy who Ulster nearly signed last year, who failed the medical. Who was fishing. Who I also can't remember. We'll Google it there.
We don't want a fishing story next year if Johnny Sexton or somebody gets injured. And look, you look at the back row. Sean O'Brien will want to get back. Josh van der Fleer. They're a couple of guys who will definitely want to try and get back in the mix. And so getting that depth in each position is an ideal scenario. I think the biggest beneficiaries of this tour have been Niall Scannell and Rob Herring. I think, they're 2 guys now that if Rory Best wasn't available or, didn't got injured again, that they could step up and put that pressure. So suddenly we've 4 hookers now: Rory Best, Niall Scannell, Sean Cronin, and Rob Herring, which is brilliant. So I think Herring and Scannell were brilliant in the couple of games. Yeah. So they're the big winners for this tour, who weren't kind of a little bit unknown about them.
It was Stephen Donald was the out half.
Stephen Donald,
that kicked the goals.
If Stephen Donald watches this, he'll kill us because we forgot his name. But you don't want a Stephen Donald situation. And
no.
Look, at the end of the day, you're going to have injuries. You're going to have injuries next year. You could lose a second row outside backs, and you want as little disruption as possible. But we kind of have this tag of 15 now, don't we? Where we're going, we've 5 players missing. So I think just if we've enough of guys who have that experience who can step in. And who knows, Sexton might be starting next year at the World Cup. Carberry could be brilliant. Conor Murray could have a little bit of a downtime. John Cooney coming into the squad as well. Now that's highly unlikely because they're world-class players. But you never know what kind of form is going to be there in 14 months' time, 15 months' time.
We obviously had Stephen Larkham on the show during the week, and he's a very, very impressive character. Obviously a sensational player, but has clearly been able to transform his way of thinking about the game into his coaching. And like reading the Australian press, he's being groomed as the natural successor. Although there's pieces today, I understand, in the local papers in Sydney suggesting that Joe Schmidt is a possible.
Can I show you that headline?
Yeah.
Hope you can read it. See it down at the bottom.
Ireland's success puts Schmidt on radar for Wallabies coaching post. It's like, good luck, lads.
It's basically saying in a little over 16 months, Rugby Australia is likely to be faced with appointing a successor to Michael Cheika as Wallabies coach, but the solution might be right beneath their noses in Ireland coach Joe Schmidt. Basically, Cheika has said after the World Cup, if they don't have a successful World Cup, he could walk away. They're giving a little bit of praise after, talking about Joe Schmidt's strength and that he could be on their radar.
Larkin was interesting in that I didn't realise that whenever you have those meetings with the referees, everybody's allowed to go. Like both teams are supposed to have representatives at it. Is that the way it happens, or do most teams allow you to meet the referee on your own?
No, you can always request. I think you can always request to meet the referee on your own. There's no kind of secret here. It's kind of unusual that unless something is kind of irritating you about the opposition and something they do that you want to have a chat with, and you want to try and get on the same wavelength. And I suppose subconsciously you're trying to get him on side about the opposition or remind him about some kind of situation where they're offside a lot at the breakdown, or they're halfway up the ruck a lot, or they get off the line too early, or they push a little bit in the line out just before the ball comes in, or they do a bit of blocking, whatever the case may be. You know, the coaches are analysing this with their coaches. They see stuff that they maybe think is illegal, that it's very hard sometimes for referees to pick up. But you highlight something like that, then it can come back to bite you if the referees start looking. But well, they're doing this wrong. But look at where your player is standing as well. He's offside as well. So look, it's for clarity, and it's a good idea because you have a conversation with the referee, and a lot of the times the old school stuff, Joe, where a referee come into the dressing room, check the studs beforehand, and say, you know, Joel Juge, for example, he's head of referees now for Europe, I think, and he's the French referee, and he's always come in and said to Stringer before a big Munster game, stop waving your hands when you know, I'll decide if they're slowing up the ball. And you know, so sometimes you can get a referee who, if you give him too much information, it can come back to bite you.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Pascal Gazer is probably the best referee of the three over these 3 weeks. He's a little bit calmer and confident. And look, I think Michael Cheika would have probably bought some stuff about the escorts running back in the kick retreat. Are they? Is it? And you know, if the referee, I don't think they're doing anything wrong. Every team does it. I think Stephen Larkham said that. But look, if there's a situation where there's a bit of blocking or sealing off at breakdown, you know, you might highlight stuff like that to him.
Yeah, well, one penalty might turn the game. What's going to happen? We know you've got to go, so what's going to happen?
That's a good question. I don't have the old crystal ball that I can look into and say and predict it. This is very tight. It'll be a true test of where Australia are at. I was very impressed with them in the first game, given their physicality. Their athleticism is phenomenal. They have some freakish athletes out wide in Corabetti and Falau. Hale Betty is a very underrated player. I think he's a really, really effective, brilliant player. Curtly Beale, on his day, he can be devastating, as he's shown a few times. But if they get enough of quality ball, they can hurt us. There's no doubt. And in retrospect, if we get that kind of outside channel defending, a bit more connectivity, it may be a strength for us because we're good at poaching ball. But I just think Ireland, I was really impressed with the way, the intensity they brought, the aggression, and I think they can bring it again. This side really believe in themselves, and I think if they get to the same level as last week, I actually don't think they need to get any better because they were just exceptional with the ball. The pressure that they put on Australia when they had the ball, but also their ball retention was super. 21 turnovers in the first test, 9 in this one. You're always going to have 7, 8, 9 because, invariably a loose ball, bad pass. But if they can keep the turnovers down to that level, I think we have the players who can control the game and win the test.
Happy days, Alan. Enjoy the rest of your time in Sydney. Thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, lads.